Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is with us in studio. And, sir, thank you for your time. And
good
morning to you.
Good morning.
How did you take the message on Putin in Ukraine last night? Went for about 12 minutes. Was it the right message? Was it on point?
Well, for the most part, I do think the president was giving himself a little more credit than we ought to give the Ukrainians. I think the demonstration of incredible bravery, their stunningly impressive president, is the reason the rest of the world is rallying to the cause.
Yes.
Vladimir Putin's invasion has done more to unify NATO than any president of either party has been able to accomplish in all these years. A complete transformation of German policy, for example. Finland and Sweden saying maybe we ought to join NATO. A lot of good is going to come out of this. In the short term, a lot of anguish and death and destruction. But there should be no confusion about Vladimir Putin, and there's been some confusion lately. He's a thug. He's a killer. He's been on the rampage, and this will not end well for him.
Do you think Putin has changed?
Well, I think he's been this all along. He was brave enough to finally try it. And look, I think the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan was a message to people like Putin that America was rethinking our forward-leaning position in the world. And I don't think if we'd cut and run in Afghanistan, Putin would have tried this at all.
Do you think there's a disconnect between what President Biden was talking last night and the urgency with which Democrats on the Hill are trying to get this money passed in order to get this done?
Well, if you're talking about the supplemental for
Yes.
Ukraine, I mean, we're going to do that, and we're going to do it quickly. They need our help, and I think there's going to be total support for that. On the domestic front, it seems to me the president didn't pivot at all. He didn't offer anything new. He didn't go in a different direction. I remember when Bill Clinton, after getting his butt kicked, said, the era of big government is over. So I was thinking maybe President Biden would do a pivot of some sort to get the people to take another look at him, because his approval rating is really in the tank.
When was the last time you spoke with President Biden?
Last night.
Last night?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a cordial relationship.
Just give us a sense of that conversation or that exchange.
Oh, we just small talk last night. It was before going over, but we've had conversations.
The reason I ask that is that, do you see any window of opportunity to do any sort of negotiation on our own energy production here? Do you see a window of opportunity, whether it's on Keystone or drilling on federal lands, where he would give you that if you gave him?
You know, that's a really good question. You could argue right now America is greener than Germany. Right now, as a result of the German pivot on energy this past weekend, you could argue America is greener than Germany right now. The president is not doing anything to increase domestic production. I mean, we were energy independent in 2019. We were actually not only meeting our own needs, but exporting oil and gas. We ought to be pivoting in the same direction the Germans went last weekend, and they were the greenest country.
I understand the point you're making. I guess my question is there room there? Or
Well,
are we stuck here?
This doesn't require any legislation. All the president has to do is just change. Quit trying to make it harder to produce on public lands. Quit making it harder to export LNG. This is within the purview of the executive branch. The president could, with a stroke of the pen, get us back in the production business, so that not only could we meet our own needs, which we did as recently as 2019, but export to Europe as well.
President Biden said several times in the speech he is going to lower costs. And then all of the policy prescriptions were extremely vague. And I know that going into the 2022 midterms, there's this battle for the independents right in the suburbs, so we can see if the Republicans can win back those voters. Did he do anything last night that made you think that people who are concerned about inflation will feel better today when they go to the grocery store and see the high prices?
No, but I think basically he was arguing for what they've been trying to do all year. After they passed the so-called American Rescue Plan, which created a 40-year wave of inflation, they actually, at the end of the year, if you recall, tried to pass what they called BBB, which would pour more gasoline on the flames and make inflation even worse. I don't think anything the president said last night is likely to deal effectively with raging inflation. They've already created that by dumping $2 trillion on the economy last year on a Democrat-only vote, which produced a 40-year wave of inflation. He's got problems across the board because they made the wrong policy decision. Where did he go wrong? He ran as a moderate. But as soon as he got elected, he signed up for Bernie Sanders' agenda, and Bernie Sanders' agenda did not work.
Last point, and on that question, Joe Manchin sat with Mitt Romney, I think, last night, sat on the Republican side. He said he was invited to do that. You've got a midterm election in 8 months. I'm not so sure that Joe Manchin's going to go for any more federal spending over the next 8 months until that election. Or
I sure hope not.
If that's the case, is Congress dead in the water?
Well, it depends on your definition of dead. What we ought to be doing is things we can agree on in the middle. I'll give you an example. The infrastructure bill was a bipartisan agreement. We may actually pass a postal reform bill here later this week, which will be a result of bipartisan work. Look, you're a football fan.
Yeah.
We ought to be operating within the 40-yard lines. The president didn't get a mandate to turn America into Bernie Sanders' vision of our future. We ought to be operating within the 40-yard lines. If we want to operate in the middle, we're here to talk. We're here to do business on things that we can agree on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Mitch McConnell. Thank you, Senator.